Welcome to the Crazy Chicken People podcast. If you're crazy about chickens, then you're in the right place. What's up, everyone? Welcome back to the Crazy Chicken People podcast, where today we're going to be talking about an often overlooked aspect of chicken care that can help you to keep an eye out on your flock's health: chicken poop. As you may have already noticed, the appearance of your chicken's droppings can provide valuable clues about its overall health and be the first place that you might see signs of trouble brewing. So grab your gloves and join me as we navigate through the various colors, textures, and smells of your chicken's poo. Starting with the basics, let's talk a little bit about what constitutes normal, healthy poop. When your chickens are feeling good, eating a healthy diet, and living a stress-free life, healthy droppings will usually appear as well-formed, brownish piles with a white cap of urites on top. Now, you might be wondering, what exactly are urites? They're the answer to something I wondered about when I first got chickens. How do they pee? And I was kind of surprised to learn that the answer to this is that they don't. At least not the way I thought they would. Chickens just have one hole for discharging their waste. It's called the cloaca, or the vent. And this is where everything comes out. They actually discharge the waste from their kidneys in the form of the solid urites that come out with their droppings, and usually appear as a little white cap on top of an otherwise brown or mostly brown pile of poo. But tidy brown piles with a snow cap on top aren't the only thing that you'll see fall from a healthy chicken's butt. It's not uncommon for chicken droppings to show slight variations in color, texture, and even odor, depending on things like diet, how well hydrated they are, and even the weather conditions. For an example, if your chicken's recently fed on a lot of fruit or leafy greens, you might notice that their droppings take on a slightly greener or softer appearance. Changes in diet or even stress can also lead to minor changes in the color or consistency of droppings. But unless you start seeing some of the more pronounced changes that we'll talk about in a bit, there's probably nothing to worry about. It's also worth noting that while these white caps of urites atop the feces may vary in size and consistency, in healthy chickens, the urites are often an off-white color, have a firm, chalky texture if you were to rub it between your fingers. What? You've never rubbed chicken poop between your fingers? Well, I guess I'm the weirdo then. Anyhow, even this can vary a little bit depending on how much water they're taking in or something unusual they may have eaten. So from time to time, you may see that white portion look a little bit more solid or maybe a little more liquidy. Another form of healthy chicken turds that might look a little off or smell especially bad are called cecal poops. If you notice a pile that looks like runny chocolate pudding, no white cap, and seems to smell way worse than most poops, you're most likely looking at a cecal poop. Unlike humans and most other critters, chickens have an extra organ that branches off of the small intestine called the ceca. This organ is meant to absorb additional nutrition by further fermenting what it is they've eaten, and so food will sit in the ceca for a little while, break down while they absorb it, and then a few times a day will come out as a separate poop that looks and smells a little different. If you saw one of these for the first time and didn't know that they're normal, that dark, runny look combined with the extra punch of stink might lead you to believe that something was wrong. But these are actually a good sign that your chicken's digestive tract is working as it should. In fact, it might be a sign of an issue if you don't see these types of poop from time to time. Now, there's another form of poop that might leave you a little puzzled or at least wondering if your chicken is eating too much. These are the large and sometimes very large poops left behind by a broody hen. If you've ever had one of your girls go broody, then you know how diligent they are about keeping those eggs warm. And a big part of that is just staying put in that nest. This results in them eating and drinking less, which you might initially think would mean smaller poops, right? But because they're so committed to staying on top of those eggs, their bodies actually adjust by storing up more waste before they need to go and let it out. So when she does occasionally make it out for some food and water, which may only be once or twice in a day, she's also taking care of some backed up chicken business. And there can be a noticeable difference in the size of those droppings. Sometimes to the point that you might think a 20-pound mega chicken made it into your yard to drop something off. So, what's the takeaway from all this? While it's important to keep an eye out for changes in your chicken's droppings, it's also important to understand that slight variations within that spectrum of normal are to be expected. And by familiarizing yourself with the usual appearance of your chicken's poops when they are healthy, you'll be better equipped to spot an unhealthy poop when you do see one. So now let's talk about what exactly it is you're hoping to not see on the ground in your coop. But before we do, I wanted to share a couple of things I learned while researching this topic that I just thought were kind of funny. The first one, this is something I actually noticed with my chickens before, but didn't really know what to make of it. I've seen hens scratch and peck around while I'm around the coop, and I would notice them kind of stop for a second, shift her body a little bit, but maybe I just never noticed that that was right before a poop. For some reason, I just always thought that chickens would poop as they were walking around. But they actually do take a moment to stop, adjust their body so that that poop can come out as easily as possible. Maybe this was common knowledge, but I thought it was funny, and now I just can't help but notice it all the time. Okay, next one is that chickens poop about 15 times a day. I did not know they go that much. But thinking about how quickly a freshly cleaned run can get poop all over it, it does make sense. The last one, and this one really cracked me up. I did not know that chickens fart. I mean, I guess it shouldn't be a surprise, but I've never heard it before, and now I totally want to. I did find a video of it happening that really made me laugh. I put a link to it in the show notes. The dude's face looked just as surprised as mine would have been when that rooster jumped up on him and then just let it rip. Okay, back to the business of chickens doing their business. Probably the most obvious and maybe the nastiest thing that you might find in your chicken's droppings are worms. I mean, this is pretty straightforward, and unlike some of the other visual indicators we'll discuss, there's really no variation of worms and poop that's okay to see. There's a few variety of worms that chickens can become infected with, and they all have a different look to them. Tapeworms and roundworms can get fairly long, sometimes up to a few inches, and almost look like an earthworm with a noodle-like color to them. Gapeworms, cecal worms, and other varieties can be pretty small, sometimes looking like little maggots or small grains of rice in their poo. Any of these are going to be pretty obvious when you see them and is something that you'll want to get addressed right away. But treating for worms can be a little bit tricky since most of them require a treatment that is specific to their type. So if you're unsure about exactly what kind of disgusting parasite it is you found, you may need to take a sample in to get it checked out. The consistency of their droppings is another indicator to look for. Most healthy poops should be firm and pretty well formed. Diarrhea or unusually loose droppings can indicate various health issues like bacterial infections, a parasitic infection, or maybe a dietary problem. But in the summertime, if you notice a poo that's a little more watery than usual, this is because your chickens are drinking a lot more water than usual. You can wait to take any action on this since it can be pretty normal. Your flock is working harder to stay hydrated, chickens are drinking maybe up to twice as much water as usual, sometimes even more in those really hot summer months. And if you give them a lot of chilled fruits and vegetables this time of year, like cold watermelon or cucumbers, these also hold a lot of water and can contribute to a slightly runny but still healthy poop. Next on the list is the color of their droppings. Most normal poops should be brown or brownish with a white cap. Any deviation from this, such as greenish, yellow, or bloody poops, can signal that there's some kind of a health issue going on. For an example, green droppings could be a sign of an issue with their liver or their bile duct, but at the same time could just be a byproduct of them eating a lot of leafy greens recently. This is where knowing what your chickens are eating daily and what their normal, healthy poop looks like can be very helpful. Blood in the poop is almost never a good sign. This can often happen when there's a problem with the liver or in their bile duct. It might even be a sign of internal bleeding caused by an injury. But this can also happen on occasion when a chicken's body sheds some of those cells within the digestive tract to help rebuild new ones. Now, if that's the case, you shouldn't see very much of it or see it for very long, so keep a very close eye out for that. Texture and smell can be another easy thing to look out for. Watered down or foamy poops might mean that there's some sort of a digestive problem or an infection. Droppings that look coated in a mucus might indicate a parasite or intestinal issue. And while a chicken's droppings don't exactly smell great when they come out of a healthy chicken, poo that has an extra foul smell could indicate digestive tract problems, maybe a backup, or even a bacterial infection. One that I've personally never seen, but can be a symptom of an internal problem, is finding undigested foods in their poo. Normally, the digestive system of a chicken breaks foods down into these smaller particles that can be absorbed into the body. But if the digestive process is disturbed or there's some kind of a problem in there, some of those food particles can pass through without being fully digested. A few reasons for this can include a sudden change in their diet, poor quality feed, or not having access to grit. Sour crop or a problem in the gizzard can also hinder the breakdown of food. Parasites like worms or some diseases such as infectious bronchitis or Marek's disease can also affect their overall health and the function of their digestive system. Finding these undigested food particles in their droppings can indicate some kind of an underlying health issue that probably requires some attention. This might mean you need to adjust their diet, provide some grit or some other kind of digestive aid, or treating for an infection of some kind. Okay, one last one I want to talk about actually kind of ties back to what I mentioned about how chickens prepare themselves to poo. But if you notice your chicken is straining to poo, like if she appears to spend a lot of effort or seems to be in discomfort while she's trying to go, maybe vocalizing her pain, or if you notice her kind of cramp up, this could mean that she's constipated or even has something more serious going on. Constipation is definitely the most common reason you'd see any of this, and it can happen when the fecal still inside of her becomes dry and caught up somewhere in that digestive system. Dehydration is usually the first cause of this, but dietary factors like not getting enough fiber can also play a part. These are all reasons that having access to fresh, clean water, quality feed, and a balanced diet are so important. Blockages in the digestive tract, like an impacted crop, maybe ingesting foreign materials like we talked about last week, or masses in the intestine can also contribute to this. And in laying hens, problems like being egg-bound or some kind of abnormality in the reproductive tract can also cause straining and pain when they're trying to go. And parasitic infections or some diseases can cause their system to shut down altogether. When you're hanging out in your chicken yard, keep an eye out for symptoms like frequent squatting or hunching over, sounds or any kind of vocalization that seems to indicate discomfort when they go, or if you see her making attempts to poop but nothing's coming out, that can be really bad. If you do notice any of these signs and believe that your chicken is backed up, it's really important to try to help them out pretty quickly. Make sure that she's well hydrated and didn't somehow find herself in a position where she couldn't get to water. Check to see if she's egg-bound and provide treatment for that if that's the case. And if it's just a matter of constipation, there are some mild over-the-counter options that you can try to help get things moving along. Things like molasses, Epsom salt, and mineral oil have all been used for this. Just do a little bit of research on exactly how to use them first so that you can safely give the right amount. I'll be real honest with you guys here. I did not know nearly as much about how a chicken's poop can provide so much insight to their health as I do now after doing this episode. So I'm really glad to have done this one, and I wanted to thank the listener that emailed and suggested it. I hope that you guys all got some helpful info out of this, and we'll be taking a little bit closer look at some of those landmines that our birds leave for us, and maybe taking a close listen to try to catch a chicken fart. If you guys have any other suggestions for show topics, I would love to hear them. Hope you all have a great week, and I'll talk to you later.